Hello anime fan, welcome back to What If Animes 2.0. So in this video you gonna see, what if Naruto reincarnated as Aegon Targaryen and became the Harem Prince of Westeros? This is part 1. And if you want more, then hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe. So let's get in the video and do check out the author of the story. The Targaryen dynasty has stood strong for 300 years and it continues to stay strong. Despite numerous civil wars and rebellions, the Targaryens' hold on their throne and power persisted, and the Targaryens themselves endured. Aegon the Conqueror may have forged the Targaryen dynasty through fire and blood, but it was his descendant, Aegon VI of his name, who made sure it continued. It all began with his birth. Ah! A scream filled the room where a Dornish woman was in the pains of labor. "Shut the fuck up, you brooding fool!" shrieked the Dornish woman. "You're not the one who is giving birth. Don't be a cunt." The man ignored his wife's harsh words. She had been in labor for hours. The pain was getting to her and she was tired. Indeed, the one who just yelled in agony was her husband. "Apologies, my love, but you are gripping my hand pretty tight. So tight it's painful. I think I felt a bone snap." This man is Rhaegar Targaryen, crown prince of the Seven Kingdoms and heir to the Iron Throne. The Dornish woman giving birth was Elia Martell, a princess of Dorne. Soon enough their first child was born to them. "It is a boy, your highnesses," Grandmaster Pycelle informed them after cutting the cord. An attending midwife offered the Grandmaster a white cloth to wrap the babe in. He held the newborn in his old, shaking hands. This was indeed their first child, but Elia had been told enough about babies to know something was not right. Why is he silent? Why does he not cry as newborn babes should? She was deeply concerned for the life of her child. "Do not be alarmed, my princess," Pycelle assured the princess and her husband. "The child is merely asleep. It is most uncommon. This is the first I have seen such a case in truth. But it does tend to happen. He may not bawl as most babes do when born, but he seems healthy as healthy can be." "Are you sure, Grandmaster?" Rhaegar calmly demanded. The newly born babe was his first child ever, his son and heir. Rhaegar would not have it that he was given the wrong information regarding his health. "See you for yourselves, your highnesses." The babe breathes as all others do. No difficulty. No sign of bluish coloring on his lips or fingertips. No abnormalities, no deformities, none whatsoever. The old maester moved to hand the boy to his mother, but she jerked in sudden pain as she clutched her still round belly. "It appears you're not done yet, my princess," the old man exclaimed. "There is one more still to come." Pycelle quickly handed the child to the midwife and returned his attention to Elia. "Elia," Rhaegar whispered worriedly as his wife's labor resumed. A part of Rhaegar was still reeling in on the fact he was now a father to a son. But that part of him soon gave way to the new knowledge that he was having twins. 2 children in one birth. "A girl," he muttered in his mind. "It must be girl." And he was right. Elia gave one more scream, which was replaced by the cries of another newborn babe. "A girl this time, your highnesses. An equally healthy girl," Pycelle told them, though clearly awake and wailing. He chuckled. "Unlike her brother, I now have 2 heads of the dragon." Rhaegar thought. Just one more. He smiled at his wife, his hand still tightly held by her. "Elia, thank you." He kissed his wife on her forehead. But he felt his wife's hand loosen its grip on his. Elia's hand fell out of his hand and Rhaegar's smile fell with it. "Elia," he cried. The princess of Dorne had lost consciousness. Only now did Rhaegar notice the blood on the sheets covering her lower body. His wife's sweat-covered face was pale. Her pink lips had turned pale. She was not responding to his calls to wake. Pycelle handed the baby girl to the prince. The Grandmaster was by Elia's side, being aided by the other midwives present in the room with them. One of the midwives ushered the prince out. He had no place there. The one midwife holding his son followed them out. Outside of the birthing room, Rhaegar held his newborn daughter in his arms. She was sleeping soundly now, like her brother, in the arms of the midwife carrying him. The grown prince didn't even notice his daughter had entered her state of slumber. Rhaegar shifted his gaze back and forth between his daughter and son. The midwife took the hint and walked closer to the new father. Rhaegar got a good look at both babes and both were perfect in his eyes. Their hairs were still too short and too scarce to determine the color. Both were asleep, so he couldn't see the color of their eyes. But the girl seemed to have inherited her mother's tanned Dornish skin. "Elia will be fine, Rhaegar," spoke a reassuring voice. It was Arthur Dane, an old friend of Elia and Rhaegar's closest friend. She's a tough woman. Something like childbirth won't get her down. Arthur set a comforting hand on his shoulder. I hope so, my friend. He looked down once again at his children. It would not do well for children to one day discover their lives came at the cost of their mothers. So what will you name your newly born children, your highness? This time it was Gerald Hightower, the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard. Elia agreed with me on the names of our children. Rhaegar indicated to the two white bundles in his and the midwife's arms to Sir Gerald. The boy is to be named Aegon. The girl is to be named Rhaenys. If we are to have another girl, she shall be named Visenya. You intend to name them after your ancestors the conquerors? Gerald asked and Rhaegar nodded. It was all for the prophecy. It was Aegon the Conqueror who united Westeros regardless of how forced it was. It will be another Aegon who will save it. From what? Rhaegar currently didn't know. The Conqueror, the Cruel, the Wise, the Good, the Unlikely. I wonder what they shall call you, my son. Rhaegar thought. The newly named Aegon stirred in the arms of the midwife. Rhaegar was new to parenting, but he quickly knew this wasn't the simple case of the child trying to find a better sleeping position. No, no. The boy was awake. The midwife quickly gave the babe to his father. The midwife had thought it was only fitting the first sight the little prince ever sees is that of his father, not some lowly peasant woman who probably wouldn't last long in their service. Little Aegon did not cry, but he seemed to stare up intently at Rhaegar. His son's eyes soon left him but then shifted about. Left, right, up, down. As if trying to take in his surroundings, trying to be aware of where he was. But that was preposterous, Rhaegar exclaimed in his head. I must just be seeing things that aren't really there. He told himself. Young Aegon's eyes were still wondering about when Rhaegar spoke to him. Hey there, my little one. Aegon's eyes, in a snap, were focused on him again. I am your father. He spoke gently and lovingly. And this one beside you is your younger sister, Rhaenys. The boy's eyes shifted to the girl. Now whether those were all signs that his son had already a developed sense of awareness or his mind just playing tricks on him, Rhaegar would leave that for the future determinations. Let me take a gander at the little tyke, said Sir Oswell Went as he playfully moved his fingers in front of Aegon's face in an attempt to get him to smile. It obviously was not working. What, you don't find that amusing? He is a newborn child, Sir Oswell, said Lord John Connington, Lord of Griffin's Roost. Babes don't smile at the funny antics of anyone until they are at least 5 moons old. He looked to Rhaegar. Congratulations on your newborn children, my prince. You have an heir now who will carry on your name and line when you are gone. Thank you, John. The boy has some odd birthmarks, John commented, referring to the 3 whisker-like marks on each of his cheeks. Rhaegar had seen them earlier but just never paid much mind to them. They were indeed odd, as Rhaegar has never heard of his family ever having birthmarks of any kind. But Rhaegar wasn't that concerned. The whiskers didn't look so bad. They even made Aegon look a little cute. How is Elia? John asked. It was then Grandmaster Pycelle exited the room. The midwives within also took their leave, bowing politely at Prince Rhaegar. Princess Elia, Rhaegar, John and the 3 Kingguard held their breath. Is fine, my prince. She is tired and has lost a certain amount of blood. But she won't be taken by the stranger today and hopefully not anytime soon. For now, she is lost to the world of sleep and dreams. Everyone let out a breath of relief. Thank the gods, said Rhaegar. His children will have their mother. She should awaken after a good number of hours, but. And there was that dreaded but. But what, Grand Maester? Rhaegar demanded. If it weren't for the babes in his arms, he would have held the old man tight and pushed him against the wall. He wasn't in the mood for such games when it came to his wife. But the birth of the twins has indeed taken a toll on her. Pycelle started to explain. The princess had always been of frail health and the birth of the twins has only served to exacerbate her condition. She will require bed rest and lots of it for months, if I may say so. I have already made arrangements for her to be transferred to a more suitable bed, to a room with easier access to fresh air facing the narrow sea. Can she? Rhaegar did not want to ask this question as it would make it seem that he only cared for Elia because she could bear children. Can she still carry and birth children? She can, but it would take a greater toll on her. My prince, I shall be straightforward with you. The very Fact she survived giving birth to 2 children at once is nothing short of a miracle. Should she become with child again, she'll most likely carry it to term, but there is a very high probability the birth will kill her. It is to my opinion that I must strongly recommend against having another child, elsewise it may cause the princess her life. This presented Rhaegar with a dilemma. He needed his 3 heads of the dragon, but to force another pregnancy on Elia will be the death of her. Sure, he did not love his wife as a husband should. But he was fond of her. He enjoyed her company and her wit. He cared for her. He certainly did not want to deprive his children of their mother. So Rhaegar decided to put such thoughts aside for now and focus on the 2 new lives he was responsible for. The 3rd head of the dragon can wait. Thank you for your service, Grand Maester. No thanks required, my prince. It is my duty to serve House Targaryen after all. He gestured to the remaining midwife. The same midwife that had held Prince Aegon earlier before handing him to Rhaegar. This is Rose, Grand Maester. Rose, of course. Prince Rhaegar, this is Rose. She shall serve as your children's wet nurse for the time being. At least until Princess Elia's health recovers and can nurse the babes herself. Now if you'll excuse me, I have a bath I need to take. Princess Elia was not the only one who was sweating in there. Grand Maester Pycelle let out a chuckle before slowly walking off. And I think I got some blood on my robes. Sir Oswell, Lord John and the wet nurse shook their heads with a grimace on their faces. They did not want to know that. Rose, Rhaegar called her attention, my prince. She stepped forward. Sir Oswell, though faithful to his vows but not one to never spare a long glance at women, took a good look at her. The wet nurse Rose was a young woman of 8 and 10 years with red hair. A pretty woman with a slender frame yet had quite the bosoms on her. She wore a dress which seemed suited for her line of duty. The top was loose and thin of fabric. It backless and sleeveless, held up by 2 strings tied into a knot behind her neck. It made for easy access to her breasts and barely hid her nipples. Sir Oswell raised his impressed eyebrows. So this woman will serve as the little prince and princess's wet nurse for the time being? A sly smile crept into his lips. Do you have children, wet nurse? Sir Gerald inquired. He was older and more experienced, not only in the ways of the sword but also in life in general, and knew the telltale signs of a woman who has had children. The Lord Commander of the Kingsguard couldn't make heads or tails of the woman tasked with breastfeeding the 2 infants. Admittedly, Gerald has been wrong before. Rose answered, a daughter. She had just turned 2 name days now. She is weaned now, but my breasts never seemed to run out of milk. With eyes leering at Rose's bountiful breasts, Oswell couldn't help but thought, I don't doubt that. You're not from King's Landing. Your accent doesn't indicate so. Gerald stated. Rose didn't bother trying to discover how he knew. No, I am not, sir. My husband and I are from the north. My husband is part of a crew for a Manderley merchant ship and he decided to bring us here to see the capital. I had heard the Red Keep was in need of a wet nurse, so here I am. Her Grace, Queen Rhaella, hired me as soon as she saw me. The sly smile on Sir Oswell's lips never faded. I'm sure she did. Oswell said before quickly realizing he wasn't supposed to. Luckily for him, no one paid him that much mind. My husband tends to our daughter whilst I work here under the royal family's service. Prince Rhaegar carefully handed his heir to the wet nurse but kept his still sleeping daughter close. Is the little prince hungry? The woman opened one side of her dress and presented her ample breast to the babe. At first seemed like young Aegon did not desire to suckle. But then he shrugged. Aegon then happily took the nipple in his mouth. Oh my, went the wet nurse with a smile. He is a hungry little thing. Arthur Dane, Gerald Hightower and John Connington gave it no further thought. This was all normal in their eyes. Sir Gerald excused himself and left. I shall go inform the king of the events here, he said. Arthur added, as shall I do the same with Ashara. My sister was crazy with worry and anticipation when I left her. And he was gone as well. John had taken little Rhaenys off Rhaegar's hands, allowing the new father's arms some respite. The sleeping girl seemed healthy, as did the boy. Princess Elia had always been of frail health. But I suppose the gods were good enough to give her womb healthy enough to have borne 2 healthy heirs. Sir Oswell, on the other hand, continued to observe the boy suckling on Rose teat. He seemed to enjoy it. A little too much. What the seven hells was he thinking? The boy was too young for such things. Much too young. But with his sense of humor, Oswell decided to attempt in poking some fun about it anyway. He went near Rhaegar's ear and whispered with a clever grin, "If you ask me, my prince, the little bugger seems to be enjoying suckling on her breast." And I mean that in a silence went. This was strange. It was all strange. He had been reborn. Or was it reincarnated? What the hell? I'm a tiny baby again. I'm also called Aegon here. Meh, Naruto was way better. Thought the newly reborn Naruto. The effeminate-looking man is my new father and my new mother nearly died giving birth to me and my twin sister. Awesome, I have a sibling in this new life. But it was still all very strange. Naruto surmised he was probably the only person in the history of ever to have experienced rebirth or reincarnation while retaining the consciousness and memories of his previous life. Well, some of his memories. There were some holes to it. He couldn't remember how old he was when he kicked the bucket the first time around or how it even happened. But he remembered being old as hell when he did. There were other memories gone as well, but despite all that, he felt content. He had accomplished his goals in his previous life. This sense of immense satisfaction was good enough for him. Had he been told prior to all this that he would be reincarnated, he would have laughed. But now? Now he was given over to a woman with the intention of breastfeeding him. Her breasts were big and milk heavy and her nipples stood ready for him. Oh man, the very thought felt uncomfortable. The wet nurse was a young woman and she admitted to be married with a daughter. But Naruto immediately took into account the possibility he was reborn into a society different from his. Those people don't seem to be bothered by it at all. He also remembered he was a newborn baby, thus had no teeth to chew food with. Damn it! He stares at the nipple. The large nipple that seemed to beckon him latch his mouth on. The woman's breasts were engorged with milk, all meant for him. And maybe his sister when she got hungry. Oh well. I might as well enjoy it. Not as if I was breastfed in my previous life anyway. Just to be clear on that, he definitely wasn't. Naruto took the nipple into his mouth and the milk flowed quickly. It's not bad. Not bad at all. He thought as he took in the taste. I think I could get used to this. Tsunade Ba-chan did say breast milk carried helpful antibodies. Oh my, he is a hungry little thing. He heard his wet nurse exclaim. So Naruto went about it all over again in his head as he drank the woman's milk. He had been reborn into a new body. The body of a seemingly defenseless baby. The keyword was seemingly. He had new parents and a sibling, a new life in probably a new place. His new father was a prince, which he guessed also made him a prince, meaning one day he'd be a king. That was pretty sweet. Naruto concluded it was useless to try and change such things. Only a higher power could have done such a thing, and Naruto determined he had to deal with what he was given. No use holding on to an old life I can never go back to. Because Uzumaki Naruto, Aegon whatever his new last name is, did not stay locked in the past. No, he would always look to the future while cherishing the present. He grinned into the teat, milk for his drinking pleasure. A new world, a new family, a new life. This wasn't some sort of a second chance where he had to fix his previous mistakes. He had lived a contented life the first time around. So this time, he intended to have some fun. This time, he was going to do things differently. I am going to paint this new world orange. He thought happily and eagerly. Oh yes. He was going to have so much fun with his second life. The royal family and court. Rhaegar knew in his mind and heart his son was the prince that was promised. Rhaegar had always known his son was destined for great things. Over the past 5 years, he had gotten glimpses of what his son was capable of. He remembered the day his children were presented to his father, King Aegon Targaryen, the second of his name. Also called the Mad King in secret. It was only a few days after the birth. Elia was confined to her bed, which left Rhaegar the sole parent for the occasion. The tailors did a wonderful job on the babe's clothes. Aegon was dressed in the Targaryen colors of red and black. Rhaenys was dressed in the Martell colors of red and dull orange. The king had easily dismissed his granddaughter Rhaenys. She smells too Dornish. Rhaegar recalled his father's words. The very moment Aerys did that, Rhaegar noticed Aegon was frowning at his grandfather. Did he understand him? Rhaegar immediately shook his head, trying to remove the thought. But things got even weirder. Aegon hardly cried. For the first 6 moons of his life, if he wanted attention, he would flail his arms wildly. Or he would pick a light object with his small hands and threw it as far as he could. If he was hungry, he'd point at his mouth. If he wanted a change in loins, he didn't want a change in loins. He wanted to be taken to the privy hole. Little Aegon had pointed furiously towards a privy hole. Rhaegar's son was smarter than regular babies, that clear as day. That made the man proud. As did it Elia. Rhaenys remained an ordinary baby, but they loved her all the same. Then came his first word. Rose. Both he and Elia were shocked and disappointed. Instead of Mama or Papa, his first word was the name of his wet nurse. Aegon never took a liking to Elia's teat and preferred that of his wet nurse, which Rhaegar thought had endeared his son to the red-haired woman. Rhaenys took to her mother's teats though, but Aegon preferred the full teats of Rose over the flat ones of Elia. But to the relief of Rhaegar and Elia, the words Mama and Papa came not long after. As did the words toilet, teats, clothes, rain, sunshine, stink, smelly, hellhole, damn and ramen. Rhaegar had reprimanded his son for saying the word hellhole, but what the 7 hells in ramen? He remembered thinking back then, it wasn't long before he started speaking full coherent sentences. He has been gifted by the gods. Grandmaster Pycelle and the Septons said. Of course he is. He is the prince that was promised. Rhaegar thought proudly. Then he learned to crawl. He and Elia had put him to sleep in the crib next to his sister one night when he was 9 months old. The next morning, he had gone missing. Rhaenys was still there, sleeping soundly. That quickly ruled out an abduction. As why take only one if you could have taken both? But nonetheless Aegon was missing. Rhaegar had alarmed the guards and the Kingsguard and a search was initiated. Surprisingly, half an hour later, a cook had brought them the little prince. He was in the kitchen, the cook said, and made a mess of it. Wasted an amount of wheat and some eggs. Said something about making ramen. There it was again. This ramen. Well, at least now Rhaegar knew it to be some kind of food. Elia didn't care. As soon as the cook came in with the child in his arms, Elia snatched him from the cook and held him close, muttering of how worried she and Rhaegar had been. Aegon looked remorseful and held to his mother tight. Then he learned to walk. If learning how to crawl was bad, learning how to walk seemed to have made things worse. Aegon would go missing more often than not. He was gone by sunrise and returned by sunset, sometimes covered in muck. No one, not even Lord Varys the spymaster, could determine where he went or where he would go. Luckily, this little habit of coming and going without anyone's notice soon ceased after a few weeks. Naruto only wanted to explore the city as well as knowing each and every nook and cranny of the Red Keep. He would do every now and then but made sure no one would notice he was missing. At the age of 3, Naruto had found another hobby instead of exploring. This time, it involved climbing on Ser Barristan's shoulders and holding on tight as the skilled knight ran around. Go, Ser Barristan, go. The little toddler would cheer, feeling the breeze hit his face. Having a child ride on your shoulders was not in the job description of a knight, let alone a Kingsguard. But Ser Barristan was sworn to do as the royal family commands. As Aegon ordered, Ser Barristan followed. When did I go from Ser Barristan the bold to Ser Barristan the horse? Ser Barristan said in his mind. It was not that he hated having to serve as Prince Aegon's amusement. He just found it so unbecoming of a distinguished knight. But fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you looked at it, Ser Barristan was soon accompanied by Ser Arthur and Prince Lewin, were each carried on their shoulders Prince Viserys and Princess Rhaenys. Viserys and Rhaenys had seen Aegon being carried around by Barristan and his children soon grew envious and wanted someone to let them ride on their shoulders. Arthur and Lewin had laughed at Barristan when they first saw the spectacle. But now, Fasta, Granduncle. Princess Rhaenys cheered. Go, go, Ser Arthur, said Prince Viserys, still unable to properly pronounce his R's. Ya, Prince commands it. Now they were neck and neck with Ser Barristan. The older knight each sent them a cunning smile. Arthur and Lewin sent him a frown in return. Don't laugh, Ser Barristan. Lewin told him as he kept pace with the other 2 Kingsguard. It's unbecoming of you. Ser Barristan laughed anyway before putting up a burst of speed, leaving the other 2 behind him. As Prince Aegon would say, eat my dust, Queen Rhaella and Princess Elia were spectators to it all. It appears your son is starting to become a bad influence to Ser Barristan. Rhaella said to Elia, who face-palmed and shook her head. Whatever the case, Ser Barristan developed a level of friendship with the little prince. If Aegon wasn't with Rhaenys or Viserys or with his parents or Rose, he would normally be with Barristan. At the age of 4 on one occasion, Prince Aegon had gone missing again, but the city watch had soon found him in the shop of the blacksmith Tovho Mott. The men of the watch apprehended the man and brought him and Aegon back to the Red Keep. His father the king accused the man of kidnapping the royal child. But suddenly Aegon spoke out. "This man is innocent," he said. "I was paying him to make these." From a pouch he had on his person, he pulled a knife-looking weapon. "Kunai," he called them. Elia immediately grabbed the weapon out of his hands. "Blessed by the gods or not, you're too young to be holding weapons, but Mom." He whined and beamed her the puppy dog look. "Nice try, young man, but that look won't work on me," his wife said sternly. "Aegon," Rhaegar knelt down to his son's level. "Where did you get the coin to pay this man?" "Easy," he grinned. "I went into the Red Keep's treasury and took some." "Well, there certainly explains the reported missing pieces of gold dragons," muttered Lord Tywin Lannister, Hand of the King. Ultimately Tovho Mott was let go, much to the man's relief. Death by fire was not in his to-do list. The other little prince, Viserys Targaryen, had become a constant playmate to his children. Eventually the three became inseparable. Aegon had called Rhaenys and Viserys his partners in crime. Things only got stranger from there. What was at the time Rhaegar's greatest surprise was when he returned to the Red Keep one day and saw Elia and his mother Rhaella come running towards him in great distress. "Rhaegar, it's terrible. Simply terrible," his mother cried, tears pooling in her eyes. Rhaegar had just ended a small council meeting. His father's escalating madness has resulted in Rhaegar taking more and more part in his father's duties. "Mother, Elia, what's wrong? Why are you both in so much distress?" "It's the children, Rhaegar. They're gone." "Aegon? Not just him. Rhaenys and Viserys have gone missing too." Elia and his mother did all they could to keep the tears and the sobs at bay. They were sick with worry, and who could blame them? It was a mother's unspoken duty to be worried for her children. "We will find them." Rhaegar tried to offer reassurance and comfort. The Kingsguard were already on the lookout. Lord Varys was doing all he could to find the three children. Rhaegar had ordered the city watch to search the city. Lord Varys was ordered to have his little birds keep an eye out on them. Even Lord Tywin had his men search for the children. Hours had passed and the day was nearing its end. King's Landing was a large place, but it had only been a day. So where could they have gone? Lord Varys confided in him the children weren't in the hidden passageways within the Red Keep. The attempted to find them came up empty. Lord Tywin suggested that they could have been kidnapped, but also noted it was strange that no ransom notes were sent. Rhaegar, Elia, Rhaella and the Kingsguard were gathered in the throne room when the reports were given. Luckily King Aerys was not present. No doubt he would have made things worse. Lord Tywin had been thanked for his efforts and that of his men and dismissed for the day. Where could they have gone? Elia's tears were streaming down her face. Viserys, Aegon, Rhaenys, where are you? Queen Rhaella screamed. "Up here, mother." A young voice said. Queen Rhaella identified the voice to be of her second son. "Viserys? Viserys, where are you?" "Up here." Viserys repeated. The three royals and the Kingsguard looked up to the far ceiling above. There they found Aegon, Rhaenys and Viserys standing upside down with their feet planted firmly on the structure above. No different had they been on the ground. Rhaegar and the Kingsguard's jaws dropped. The three kids, ages 4 to 6, were smiling down at them, waving at them happily. Not at all afraid or worried for their safety. Queen Rhaella fainted. Thankfully Ser Gerald caught her. Rhaegar snapped out of his daze and told them, "You three, get down from there." "Sure things, Pops." Aegon cheered. He held Rhaenys and Viserys close and jumped, performing a flip while falling and landing on his feet right in front of his parents. "That was fun." Rhaenys giggled. Again. Viserys chanted. And Elia fainted and Rhaegar caught her. "Arthur, help me bring Elia to our chambers." "Ser Gerald, Ser Barristan, see to it my mother is looked after." "Ser Oswell, Prince Lewin, keep a good eye on these three." He and Arthur carried his wife back to their chambers. If he wasn't a true believer before, he was now. The prophecy had foretold the coming of a hero, someone who would lead the armies of men against a great foe. Yet there was nothing about what his son along with his daughter and little brother had done. But perhaps the prophesy neglected to mention that because maybe it would have been obvious that the prince that was promised would have such abilities. A few hours later, Elia stirred awake on their bed. Rhaegar, Elia, are you feeling all right? I had the strangest dream. The children had gone missing for an entire day, and when we found them again, they were standing upside down on the ceiling. I assure you, Mom, that was no dream. They heard Aegon speak, but it came from above again. Rhaegar and Elia looked up and found once again the three children standing upside down. They smiled and waved at them again, resulting in Elia's return to unconsciousness. How did they get in here without my notice? Rhaegar thought, and how did they slip past Sir Oswell and Prince Lewin? Suddenly the door to their chamber opened. There they are. My apologies, my prince. We looked away for only a few seconds but found them gone when we looked back. That was the honest-to-God's truth, but Prince Lewin said differently, we're playing hide and seek. Hide and seek. Hide and seek, Rhaenys cheered, were you? Rhaegar asked with narrowed eyes, well we were. Aegon gleefully answered, but they weren't. His thumb pointed at them, little bastard. Sir Oswell mentally shouted. Rhaegar sent them a look which basically said, I will deal with you later. Sir Oswell and the Dornish prince turned Kingsguard gulped and exited the room. Aegon, son. Rhaegar held his son close. Please return your sister and uncle to their rooms. There has been enough lunacy for one day. Can you do that? He essentially pleaded with the boy. Aegon smiled softly. Yes, father. Rhaegar kissed his children and baby brother on their foreheads. Aegon soon led them out. The prince that was promised is a troublemaker. Rhaegar concluded, and had he been smarter he would have come to realize that prophecies were vague and therefore easily misinterpreted and dangerous. Rhaegar would later speak with his son about his antics and misbehavior. Rather than raising his voice and physically punishing the boy, Rhaegar sat Aegon down and had a meaningful conversation with his son. He told him it was wrong to go on and about without notice, and it was worse to have put so much stress on his poor mother and grandmother. At the end of their little heart-to-heart talk, Aegon had promised he would never do something like that again. Rhaegar had sensed the genuine remorse in the voice of his son. The older prince and father smiled proudly and contently at his son. Aegon would later apologize to his mother and grandmother for the incident. Now that Aegon would calm and behave himself, Rhaegar could now focus on the true matter at hand. His father. The young prince, needless to say, Naruto, was in a hurry to grow up. Being a baby and a toddler wasn't much fun despite being more developed than regular babies. When his new father Rhaegar had gotten him to promise never to put his mother and grandmother through the whole ordeal of worrying about them getting lost, Naruto had to find something else to do. So he partook in something he never thought he would ever do. He went to the library and did some extensive reading. Mostly on history because he wasn't a fan of math, and he found that the society he was reborn in was medically behind from his previous life. The fact he still had use of his shadow clones had made his endeavor of learning Westerosi and Planetos history all the easier. It surprised him just how unoriginal the people in Westeros were when it came to names. He had known he was the sixth of his name, but there were a few more Aegons aside his 5 previous namesakes. Not to mention who most of his family had names that started with Ray, Vis, A, and often ended with Ris. Then there were the other houses in Westeros. But enough about the names. There were other issues like how women were treated so unequally, like how the small folk were always left in the dirt and how vulnerable they were during wartime, like how this supposedly united country had no standing army but mostly farmers and fishermen called on short notice, like how there was no ramen. Then it hit him. Hit him hard like a battling ram. What if he was reborn in Westeros as a prince in line for the throne so that he could fix the life and policies of Westeros? Naruto wasn't an arrogant or pretentious man who had visions of grandeur and believed that he was meant for great things. He believed that his life was whatever he chose it to be. But what if that was why he was there, fully aware of who he was and filled with his previous life's knowledge? He put aside those thoughts for now. His grandfather was still alive and his father was not yet king. And he himself was still a boy. Naruto's time will come, but he guessed a little pre-planning and a head start in the future wouldn't hurt. Naruto also intended to introduce ramen in the future. It was the one thing he looked forward to the most. Seriously, what kind of world doesn't have ramen? This is insane, I tell you. He said to himself that one time. With learning about history done, it was now time to settle another curiosity. The men who surrounded his grandfather looked like an untrustworthy bunch. The old maester was often seen sneaking women into his quarters despite his vows of celibacy. Tywin Lannister was an ambitious man, and Naruto had heard he tried to have his father marry his daughter years ago. But the king refused, and after resulting in the loss of some guy from some place called Storm's End, Aerys had settled on his mother, Elia Martell of Dorne. But he had got to hand it to Tywin. He stayed dutiful despite his grandfather's insanity and persistent insults. Then there was Varys. Ever since the ceiling walking incident, Varys had always looked at him with suspicion and wariness and tended to avoid him as much as he could. Naruto had gotten sick of the game and decided to confront the eunuch. "Hello, Lord Varys," Naruto said after patiently waiting for Varys to return to his chambers. Varys carefully hid how startled he was at seeing the prince sitting on his table in his room. "Prince Aegon, what may I help you with?" Varys asked the child. Naruto really had no time for these games. "Be frank with me, Lord Varys. You dislike me for some reason. A reason I know not and a reason I wish to know. So tell me," Naruto said in tone that left no room for arguments. "First, I do not dislike you, my prince. Just wary. But it is the more older individuals much like yourself that I dislike." "Loathe even? Individuals much like myself?" Naruto repeated. "What do you mean? Mages, wizards, witches, sorcerers, maegi, or any other name you might call anyone who delves in magic. Magic? You think what I do is magic?" Naruto raised an eyebrow. "Well, what else might it be, my prince? You clearly are able to walk on the ceiling as though it were solid ground. You can remain hidden for an extended amount of time without being detected." It was true. Varys's little bird couldn't find Naruto. If it can't be explained through natural, logical, or scientific means, then it must be magic. "Why do you hate magic and their practitioners, Lord Varys? Why do you hate me?" "I do not hate you, my prince. You have done me no wrong. But the reason why is not a tale I would tell to someone so young. Not even a prince gifted by the gods. Maybe in the future I will. But for now, let's just say a sorcerer did something to me once. It wasn't pleasant, and after that I developed a strong hatred for magic and those who practice it. But that is not to say, I go out of my way to actively dispose of them. You have nothing to worry from me, Lord Varys. I intend you no harm unless you act first. Then it appears you and I will remain in good terms. I have no intention of harming anyone." All throughout this conversation, Lord Varys had almost forgotten he was speaking to a 4-name-days child nearing 5. "What do you want exactly, Lord Varys?" "I beg your pardon," said Varys, genuinely not expecting that particular question. "What do you want? You are not Westerosi from what I have heard. You owe the royal family nothing and you could easily make a profit being an information broker rather than a spymaster. Being an information broker would be more profitable, but it's also a rather risky business. But to answer your question, my prince, I want to serve the realm. I wish to keep it safe and away from the ever so lingering clutches of war." "Serve the realm? Not the king?" Aegon asked curiously, not accusatory. A manner that Varys caught. "Someone has to serve the realm. Kings come and go, my prince. That is a harsh truth, but a truth nonetheless. A king rules and dies, but the realm will remain long after him. Someone has to make sure that it survives when those in a clear position of power can't or won't." Hearing that made Varys a lot more likable to the young Prince Aegon. But it didn't mean Aegon was going to start trusting him completely. After all, what may be good for the realm may not necessarily be good for the king. But Aegon thought, better a dead king than a living tyrant. Naruto would still keep an eye on him later, but at least he seemed more reliable than all the others giving his grandfather counsel. "When I am king, Lord Varys, I would like your help in managing this country. Should the day come and I am still able, I will do all that I can." It was then Aegon headed for the door. "Good day to you, Lord Varys. I better get back now." Varys knew better than to let a royal child wander alone in the Red Keep, but he knew the boy was capable of looking out for himself. "Good day to you as well, Prince Aegon. And please, just call me Varys. I am no lord." And all of it was kept a secret from his mother and father and pretty much everyone. The tourney at Harrenhal. Never before were so many lords and ladies gathered in one place, and never before was there a tourney of grand spectacle. From axe throwing to horse riding to archery and even singing, though the latter was reserved for bards or anyone who was better skilled and talented at singing. But most were interested in melee and the jousts. It was to be a 10-day tourney that could foster friendship among the various nobility of Westeros. Banners from all over Westeros were gathered and situated in numerous tents just outside of Harrenhal. House Went, the generous hosts of the tourney, made sure everyone was given enough space of their own. It wouldn't do for lords to start squabbling over a lack of personal space. Aegon and Rhaenys were 5 years old now. Viserys was 7. After 5 years, Naruto had come to accept being called Aegon, but in his mind, he still referred to himself as Naruto. Rhaegar took part in the singing. He played his harp with the skills he has honed for years. It made some of the ladies cry, including one Lyanna Stark. "Do you have to sing such sad songs, Dad?" Naruto asked. "Sad songs are what I'm best at, my son." Rhaegar ruffled his son's white hair. Over the years, Naruto's white hair had gone from the straight white locks that Targaryens typically had to spiky. He also kept it short rather than long and down to his shoulders. The choice of length never bothered Rhaegar. He figured his son could choose how long his hair would be. How it ended up spiky was the mystery there. Naruto also chose to wear bright orange clothes instead of the Targaryen red and black. Some people were already calling him the Orange Prince. "Oh?" Rhaegar said in curiosity. "Ser Barristan is taking part in the singing as well?" Everyone turned their attention to one of the most honorable knights in Westeros. Ser Barristan sat on a stool and readied his instrument. Ser Barristan cleared his throat and began. "I realize the screaming pain. I hear it loud in my brain. But I'm going straight ahead with this scar." Naruto found himself cheering, as did everyone else who heard the knight sing. So far everything seemed to be going well. Until King Aerys had arrived, looking every bit as how anyone would view a madman. If the nobles of Westeros were skeptical of Aerys's rumored insanity, they weren't anymore. Things were just going downhill from there. Aerys had accepted Jaime Lannister into the Kingsguard, causing a slight so grievous that Lord Tywin resigned from his post as Hand of the King. Aerys had then sent Jaime to safely escort Queen Rhaella back to King's Landing, depriving the young man the chance of gaining some glory. Luckily for Viserys, the king had allowed him to stay. Then the Mystery Knight, the Knight of the Laughing Tree, took to the joust and defeated 3 knights. King Aerys in his paranoia had come to the conclusion that the Mystery Knight was laughing at him and wanted him found and arrested for treason, ordering Rhaegar to carry out his command. So while Rhaegar went looking for the Mystery Knight, who hasn't made a reappearance since defeating just those 3 knights, Viserys and Rhaenys were all eager to see all the others' knights show off the martial prowess. Naruto was bored. Naruto sighed seeing grown men fight each other with swords like children with sticks. That feeling of boredom only increased when the jousts began, when grown starting fighting each other with sticks in truth. The 5-year-old then asked his mother if he could wander off. Elia could always have Ser Barristan keep an eye on him and let the boy do as he asked for. But first Elia asked, "Why Everfer, my son?" And Naruto answered his second mother, "It's boring." It was plain as any answer can be. "Do you not like the joust?" Naruto pouted and crossed his arms. "There is nothing fun about seeing grown-ups poking each other with glorified sticks." Elia rolled her eyes and gave an amused sigh. "All right, but Ser Barristan goes with you." Naruto happily responded to that and thanks his mother. Naruto enjoyed Ser Barristan. The knight was more of a grandfather to him than Aerys ever was. Naruto hurriedly left and Ser Barristan trailing behind him. Quietly, Ser Barristan. Naruto told the knight. They were walking through the woods. They weren't up to anything for silence to be needed, but Naruto was in his way training Ser Barristan to move quickly without making much noise. At some point later on, Naruto would realize that a knight was very different from a shinobi. For knights wore heavy, metal armor and carried large metal weapons with them. Unlike shinobi that wore vests and metal forehead protectors at best and carried small weapons. Rhaegar, who had been sent by his mad father to find the Knight of the Laughing Tree, had found the Knight of the Laughing Tree. Everyone had been curious to the true identity of this armored individual. The knight only competed thrice during the joust and no more after that. His timing couldn't be better. The knight was in the process of removing his armor. The man beneath the armor flabbergasted him. The knight was none of the suspects he thought of. It wasn't even a man. It was Lady Lyanna Stark, the only daughter of Lord Rickard Stark. Imagine that, a woman was skilled enough to dismount 3 trained knights in the jousts. Now Rhaegar was no peeping Tom and would have turned away to give the young lady some privacy. He was a respectful man and married. He knew he should have closed his eyes or looked away. But he couldn't remove his eyes from Lyanna, who was by now naked as the day she was born. He was lost in her beauty, hearing nothing else but his own heartbeat and seeing nothing else but Lyanna. The she-wolf was a voluptuous, well-endowed beauty. A narrow waist, wide hips suitable for childbearing, lean arms and well-toned thighs and full breasts which would undoubtedly nurse any child she has in the future. Rhaegar did not want to think it, but Lyanna Stark was more beautiful and lovely than his own wife. He kept his eyes focused on her all the way until she was fully clothed in the dress made for women. "My lady, I see you're dressed normally now," Howland Reed said as he made his way to Lyanna. "Thank you for what you've done for me. You're my father's bannerman. I wasn't about to let those 3 squires go unpunished. So I went after the knights they served. And I am no lady." Howland chuckled briefly. "I am starting to see that you are not. Now I believe we should head back before someone notices we're gone." The two went off, leaving the armor and the infamous shield Lyanna used. When Rhaegar was sure they were gone, he went to the spot where the armor and shield laid. "Incredible," he whispered, grasping the shield. Meanwhile Aegon and Barristan were just casually walking through the woods. It was an uneventful, at least until they found Rhaegar just as he dropped the shield with the painted laughing weirwood tree. "My prince," Barristan called out as they approached the older prince. "Sir Barristan, Aegon," Rhaegar gasped. "What are you doing here?" Rhaegar had asked so Aegon would answer. "I was bored with the jousts, so I left with Mom's permission and Sir Barristan came with me." Rhaegar turned to Barristan, who stood behind the boy. "It is the truth, my prince," Barristan told him. "I see you found the Knight of the Laughing Tree." Barristan indicated at the shield at Rhaegar's feet. "Or what's left of him. I was trailing him, but I'm afraid he managed to slip past my fingers." Rhaegar lied. He didn't want to do it to someone like Sir Barristan, but he wasn't about to admit in front of his own son and one of the most honorable men in Westeros that he had developed romantic feelings towards a woman who was not his wife. Everyone's smile had faded and everyone's laughter had died. Rhaegar had passed over his wife Elia and crowned Lyanna as the Queen of Love and Beauty. Elia was glad Rhaenys and Viserys were away and absent for the event. Naruto, on the other hand, was a different matter. He sat beside his mother and like her, he had a front-row view to what his father just did. Naruto was aware that men in the society he was in had a common tendency to cheat on their wives. Infidelity to one's spouse was commonplace in Westeros. Well, at least for the nobility. His own name Sake, Aegon the Unworthy, was an out-and-about cheater and had so many mistresses and bedded much more women. Naruto was aware his parents did not love each other romantically but at least respect each other. He had always put it in mind that at some point one of them would take in a paramour. But for fuck's sake, his father could have been more discreet about it. He was a married man and heir apparent to the Iron Throne, and the woman he just declared his love for was the fiancée to another man. Naruto's adult mind would not be affected as much if one or both of his parents took a lover. He was worried of how this would affect Rhaenys. He was also worried of the backlash this would cause. A lot of lords had already come to hate the king, or at least spared him no amount of love. What his father just did would certainly anger Houses Martell, Stark and Baratheon. Luckily, much to Naruto's relief, nothing had happened after that. His uncle Oberyn had not thrust a spear through his father's chest. The king did nothing. The Starks and Robert Baratheon were also silent. War of the Usurper. Months had gone by and Naruto had assumed that whatever it was that possessed his father had gone away. That was until he had heard that Rhaegar had absconded with Lyanna. Rumors were circulating that Rhaegar had forcefully taken Lyanna and was raping her. Naruto refused to believe any of that. His father was no rapist, and if he was, Aegon would castrated the man himself. "Rhaegar, come out and die." Naruto heard a voice loudly demanding his father's death. "Who is that Sir Barristan?" Naruto inquired his constant companion. "I am not sure, my prince, but it does not sound good." The 5-year-old jumped off the chair he sat on and started to walk off. "Where are you going, Prince Aegon?" Rose asked. Naruto had come to like Rose so much that he requested his parents to keep the woman around, maybe not a wet nurse anymore, just a simple servant in the castle. The woman was useful enough and capable enough so Elia and Rhaegar didn't see why not. Aside from his family and Esser Barristan, Rose was often in the company of the young prince. The loyal maidservant could only see her family a few times a year. Her husband and daughter lived in the north while she lived and worked in King's Landing. She was also sure her husband had been cheating on her and had sired some bastards if her daughter's careless and innocent slips of the tongue were anything to go by. Rose and Barristan followed Naruto searching for the source of the voice. The damn fool has no idea of the amount of trouble he is going to land himself on if the king hears him. Upon hearing their little prince say that, the two paled and gulped. "We best get to him first then." Outside the Red Keep, Naruto, Barristan and Rose found Brandon Stark still loudly shouting, "Rhaegar! Come out and die!" The members of the City Watch assigned to the entrance of the Red Keep did their duty and refused Brandon entry into the castle. But they just as dutifully stepped aside to let their prince leave the castle. Esser Barristan was with him and they were sure the northerner wouldn't hurt a child. Naruto had found Brandon being accompanied by Ethan Glover, Jeffrey Mallister, Elbert Aaron, Kyle Royce. What seems to be the problem here? Naruto demanded as he drilled a hole through Brandon's skull with his eyes. "Your father took my sister." He yelled as he stared down at the boy. "He is probably raping her as we speak and I want her back. Because if she isn't returned to me, you'll what exactly?" Naruto interjected, his eyes narrowing and his arms crossing. Despite what Rhaegar did, he was still his father, still family, and Naruto had a duty to protect his family. Plus there was no solid proof that his father had indeed turned abductor and rapist. "This is none of your concern, boy. Return to hiding behind your mother's skirts like a good little boy and leave this matter to grown men. You're demanding my father's death. This is my concern. Now what proof do you have to prove on what you are accusing my father of doing?" Brandon's friends observed the exchange between the two from a distance. "Is he truly only 5 name days?" Ethan Glover whispered to Elbert Aaron's ear. "He should be." Elbert whispered back, "Well, he speaks like a man grown." Jeffrey pointed out and they all nodded their heads together. Brandon answered the boy, "I need not prove. I know what he did. Now go tell you father I want my sister and his head." Naruto really didn't like that threat towards his father. Before anyone could do anything, Naruto sent a powerful fist up Brandon's manhood. The sound of something fleshy being squished and squished hard was heard all around, but to all the spectators and with most of them men, it was like a sound of thunder had cracked in the sky. Brandon's hands immediately went to protectively cover his crushed manhood. He fell to his knees before falling to the ground completely. With Brandon on the ground, his friends got a good view of the little prince crackling his knuckles. When Naruto took a step forward, they all took a step backward. The boy had just punched Brandon through his armor and his knuckles weren't even scratched. And was that blood pooling through Brandon's clothes and armor? Naruto mentally tilted his head. It seems I put too much into that punch. Whoops, he mentally whistled before brushing it off. Well, I can always heal him later. The Orange Prince then asked Brandon's friends, "Now does anyone else wish for my father to come out and die?" He said with a very ominous tone that promised pain if the answer to the question was a yes. But Brandon's friends were not cowards. It was just Brandon. "We were only here for moral support," Elbert Aaron said after losing his spine to the deathly glare Naruto was sending them. The men of the City Watch soon surrounded the unwanted guests to King's Landing and arrested them, binding them in chains. "King Aerys's orders, my prince," the leader of the Goldcloaks said. A half-horrified look formed in Naruto's face. This is not good, he thought as the men were led away in chains, and indeed it was not good. After imprisoning Brandon and his friends, Aerys demanded the fathers of the men come to King's Landing to ransom their children. All that was result in their deaths except for Ethan Glover. Naruto couldn't do anything because his mother had taken great care not to expose him and his sister to any of his grandfather's fits of insanity. It goes without saying the war broke out. So far, the rebels had won every battle except one. His father had apparently been in the Tower of Joy with Lyanna Stark. Esser Gerald was sent to bring him back so he could lead the Loyalist army. Rhaegar had kissed Rhaenys farewell, telling her he would return soon. To his wife, he promised to explain everything once the rebellion had been crushed and defeated. He had never intended to hurt her or for the war to even come to be. Now he had to fix what his actions had caused. To Jaime Lannister, he told the newest member of the Kingsguard to remain in the Red Keep rather than fight with them in the field. Safeguard my wife and children, Sir Jaime. I desire to hold them in my arms once I return from battle. I will, my prince. Now where is Aegon? I do not wish to leave without saying farewell to my son. Aegon is vexed with you, Rhaegar. Was all Elia said before turning away with Rhaenys. My son is upset with me? Your son is unlike all the children his age. He is fully aware of the state of the realm and, why it is that way? My son blames me? Rhaegar sadly asked to no one in particular. It is not in my place to say. Sir Jaime said. Rhaegar just solemnly nodded. To your station then, Sir Jaime. Yes, my prince. Rhaegar lingered in his spot for some time, looking out the window and out into the horizon where Robert Baratheon and the rebels were waiting. Sir Barristan, Prince Lewin and Sir Jonathor soon walked up to him and informed him that the army was ready and they should leave the earnest. Just as they were about to exit the Red Keep, they heard a young voice call out to Rhaegar, Dad! 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 Rhaegar turned to see his son, wearing his bright orange clothes running to him. It did his soul good to see his son before going off to battle. Rhaegar went down on one knee and opened his arms where his son ran into. He pulled him into an embrace before letting him go. Take me with you, Dad. I can fight. Now Aegon may blame Rhaegar for what his foolishness and his carelessness have started and his respect for father may have dwindled. All the lives lost, all the chaos and destruction, and for what? Some woman he loved more than his mother. There would be time for that later. Right now, he had to be there in the battlefield. Because Rhaegar was still family and Naruto would protect his family. The three Kingsguard smiled warmly at the little prince's willingness to fight for his family. Rhaegar had always known his son would have to fight one day. But it was still too early. Aegon, the prince that was promised, was still only 5. Sure, he was capable of some form of magic like walking on the ceiling, but he was no combatant. No one had informed him of what he did to Brandon Stark. Not that it would have changed Rhaegar's mind. No, his son would take no part in this war. Aegon will fight, but it would be not this day and not this war. I need you here, Aegon. I need you to be safe. Please do not fight me on this. I know you are not pleased with me, but I promise that once this war is over, I will tell you why I did what I did and why it was necessary. Please stay here and wait for me to come back. Aegon frowned at his father before pulling out a 3-pronged kunai with some writings on it that Rhaegar was not familiar with. At least take this. If all does not go well or if you are losing, use this. Just throw it to the nearest enemy and it will turn the tide of battle. Aegon pleaded. Oh, how he hated to plead. Rhaegar did not believe that a single strange blade could change the tide of battle, but he would do as his son asked. He gently took the kunai from Aegon before giving him one final hug. The trident, after battle eyes with blurred vision opened and closed before finally able to focus on the ceiling of the tent. You've awakened, Prince Rhaegar. The maester had said you'd be out cold for at least one more day. Well, you are made of tougher stuff. Sir Barristan, Rhaegar said weakly. Sir Barristan was no longer in armor, but he had his sword at his side to be safe. The knight was several bandages wrapped on his arms and legs and a few on his face. Even he couldn't leave the battlefield unscathed. Rhaegar tried propping himself up with his shoulders, but pain made him flinch and he fell back on the bed. Easy, my prince, you took a direct blow to the chest from a warhammer, Barristan said, trying to get Rhaegar to rest. Though reminding Rhaegar of how and why his chest was wrapped in bandages had only the opposite effect. The battle? Did we? Rhaegar nervously said, trying to get up again only for the pain in his chest to stop once more. Barristan held Rhaegar's shoulders and slowly rested him down again. Calm yourself, my prince. The battle was won, Barristan said with a smile. Rhaegar let out a relieved sigh and finally allowed himself to rest on the bed. Thank the gods. Thank the gods. Now his family was safe and out of danger. I had thought all was lost. And we all thought we lost you, my prince. The maester called it a miracle. One does not get a warhammer to the chest and end up with only a couple of broken ribs and a fractured sternum. No injury to the lungs or to the heart. No internal bleeding. Just some broken bones and torn muscles. The gods must be looking out for you indeed. A little bit of bed rest and you'll be back to normal in no time. Ser Barristan sat down on a chair and pointed behind Rhaegar. The same goes for them. Rhaegar slowly turned his head to the other side and saw the two other Kingsguard who went him to battle. Prince Luwin, Ser Jonathor. We are able to get to them in time. A minute more and we would have lost them both. They will take longer to recover but they will. I'm just glad I lost no one. How long was I unconscious? A little over a week. Was Barristan's answer. A week? Well, better wake up a week later than to never wake at all. Knowing that the battle was won and that his Kingsguard are all alive, Rhaegar let out a long exhale of relief. Though he would have to get on his feet sooner rather than later. Lyanna should be heavy with child by now and he needed to get back to her. The prince smiled as he turned his attention back to Barristan. He laughed a little, careful to not harm himself. Ser Barristan, I had the most peculiar dream. Oh? Do tell, my prince. Kind Ser Barristan, always willing to lend an ear. I could use a tale for amusement. Robert Baratheon had just hit me with his warhammer and, flashback, warhammer impacted chest armor. The large dent was clear on Rhaegar's ruby-encrusted breastplate. The rubies all spilled into the river, no doubt eventually leading to its future name. The Battle of the Trident was the decisive battle which would determine the course of the war. It was here the Loyalist will secure the Targaryens' continued reign or the extermination of the Targaryen family and removal from power. Rhaegar coughed up blood as Robert Baratheon smiled triumphantly and dastardly despite the numerous wounds Rhaegar had inflicted on him. Baratheon had angrily demanded Lyanna's return throughout their fight. In Rhaegar's mind, Baratheon had either truly loved Lyanna or saw her as a possession which he became quite possessive over. But whatever was the case, it did not matter at that moment then and there. The heir to the Iron Throne felt his strength leaving him, his hands having dropped his sword and shield. He stumbled back, his footing on the riverbank almost gone. So in one last desperate attempt to put an end Robert thus removing the figurehead of the rebellion, Rhaegar pulled out the kunai Aegon had given him just before he left for the battle. Please let this work. Please, gods old and new, let my son's partaking gift work. He pleaded in his mind for his already pain-distorted aim to be accurate and his injuries weakened arm to be true. Rhaegar had never thought he would actually need to use his son's blade, but it was his only chance now. If not to save his life but to at least strike an equally devastating loss to the rebels' side. With the last of his remaining strength to move, Rhaegar threw the kunai straight for Baratheon's exposed face. Then he fell to the muddy riverbank. Just as the kunai was halfway into reaching Robert's face, Aegon suddenly appeared with the kunai firmly in his hand with a second kunai in his other hand. With chakra-enhanced kunai at the ready, Aegon delivered several armor-slicing slashes at Robert from his head all the way down to his feet. Robert was dead before Aegon landed elegantly on the ground. Robert was dead from the very first strike anyway. Rhaegar was spectator to it all even though he was flat on the ground. Rhaegar tried reaching out to his 5-year-old son but Aegon did not spare him a glance. Instead he disappeared in a flash of orange. Then as Rhaegar looked on at the battlefield, he saw brief glimpses of his son along with the orange flash. And wherever his son and his orange shadow went, men dropped to their hands and knees. Rhaegar could still see them moving, so he knew Aegon didn't kill them all. Just as his eyes were finally caving in and with only loyalist forces left standing, Rhaegar saw his son appear before him. Even though Aegon had just been in battle and most likely the one responsible for their victory, there was not a single drop of blood on him, except his weapons. Naruto dropped his kunai and his hands glowed, drawing them close to Rhaegar's wounds. Aegon, my son, please forgive me. I messed up, Rhaegar said mentally just before darkness finally took him. End flashback, and then I woke up here. Rhaegar finished his tale. He closed his eyes and thought of getting some more rest. I assure you, Dad, that was no dream. Rhaegar's eyes snapped open, what, and saw Aegon upside down with his feet firmly on the tent's ceiling. Then, like when he was 4 days, he jumped down and landed upright next to his father. My prince, I did not hear you coming in. Barristan said in a somewhat apologetic way. But the little prince only sent him a small smile before turning his attention of his father. In a sing-song, cute and innocent manner, Aegon poked his father's bandaged chest with his small index finger and rubbed it in. causing Rhaegar to flinch and wince in pain. "Tilda, you have some explaining to do. Prince Aegon, please, stop poking your father's wound." Aegon complied with Ser Barristan's request and happily skipped out. "Ser Barristan," Rhaegar said when the pain subsided, "what did my son do?" "He pretty much did as your dream said he did." Barristan happily chuckled. "Prince Aegon did come here and won the day for the loyalists." Barristan gave out an amused sigh. "I don't know how he got here so fast and I don't fully understand how he did it, but one minute we were all fighting and the next, the rebels were all down on their hands and knees, unable to stand let alone walk, because Prince Aegon had severed what he called the Achilles tendon. I don't know what a tendon is or who this man Achilles is either, but right now, I don't find myself caring in the least. The battle was won. Aegon won the day? He also secured a peace with the rebels." Ser Barristan gave out a short yet hearty laugh. "You should have been there, Prince Rhaegar. You should have been there to see all those lords bow to the whims of a child. Especially Lords Arryn and Stark. But in all seriousness, the rebellion is officially over. The Orange Prince negotiated a peace with the rebelling lords. A 10% increase in their taxes for the next 10 years. No hostages, but everyone had to swear fealty again to the Iron Throne. The boy also works fast. He immediately sent the fastest messenger to Storm's End to deliver terms of surrender. Stannis Baratheon was wise enough to do so, and Lord Tyrell has taken it upon himself to feed the garrison of Storm's End as a sign of no hard feelings, as Prince Aegon put it. And of course, the return of Lyanna Stark. "No," Rhaegar instantly said, but ended up agitating his wounds. "Lyanna must remain with me." Rhaegar hissed in pain. "Lyanna Stark has not been returned to Lord Eddard Stark yet. But I would be careful in trying to renegotiate with that. This war was partly fought for her safe return after all. I of all people know what this war was fought for, Ser Barristan. There is no need to remind me. My apologies, Prince Rhaegar. I meant no disrespect." "No, Ser Barristan, do not apologize. I am partly at fault for all of this. I had allowed myself that one act based on impulsion and carelessness instead of thinking about it thoroughly and meticulously. I should have been more thoughtful, but I wasn't. And the realm bled for it. It is not in my place to judge, my prince, but all is not lost and you are still young. If you wish to atone for all this, you have plenty of time. Thank you, Ser Barristan. Your son is truly remarkable, Prince Rhaegar. Winning battles almost single-handedly, treating with the lords of the North, the Vale, the Stormlands and the Riverlands. Who can say they were a peace broker at the tender age of 5? My son is the prince that was promised, Ser Barristan. He is gifted by the gods. How else could he have done all that he has? I do not believe in prophecies, Prince Rhaegar. But I do know that Aegon is gifted by the gods and he has a large destiny before him. He could very well be a combination of Aegon the Conqueror and Jaehaerys the Conciliator. Rhaegar could only meekly nod his head. Ser Barristan. A messenger called out as he entered the tent. Then he saw Rhaegar awake. My prince, he bowed, I bring news from the capital. Something has happened. He handed a closed scroll and respectfully left the tent. Barristan opened and read the scroll. From his facial expression, Rhaegar could tell the news was bad. What is it, Ser Barristan? What has happened? Barristan held the scroll down and with the straightest face he could pull up, he said, The king is dead. Rhaegar's eyes widened as Barristan finished. Your grace. Rhaegar was king now. Naruto walked along the pathways of the camp, headed for where the northern lords were resting. It has been a hell of a week. Time had flown by so quickly that everything that had happened was still so fresh in his mind. His interesting week all started when he felt the seal on the kunai he gave his father suddenly activate. Flashback, my prince, is this really all necessary? Rose stood at the side and watched Naruto sat on Jaime Lannister's shoulders. My prince, please. I have given you a ride on my shoulders all morning. Please let me rest. Jaime begged, for the young prince to let him rest. You will thank me for this when you can run a mile without stopping. Now continue, Naruto ordered. Now that Ser Barristan was gone, he had to find someone else for him to ride on. There you are, Ser Jaime. Princess Elia, how may I be of service? Jaime asked while gasping for breath and with Naruto still on his shoulders. The queen is in need of you. Why? I don't know, but she is in need of you. She winked at Ser Jaime and taking great effort to conceal the wink from Naruto. It failed though. It was clear to Naruto now that his mother was just trying to get Jamie away from his antics. "Well, you heard your mother. The queen is in need of me." Jamie gently removed Naruto from his shoulders and sat him on the ground. "Young man, you know better than to hog the last Kingsguard in the Red Keep to yourself." Elia lectured her son. "Now why don't you go and play with Rainies and Visories?" "Yes, Mom," Naruto said in a displeased manner appropriate for someone his age. "Rose, kindly make sure he gets to where Rainies and Visories are." "Of course, my princess." Rose took Naruto's wrist gently. "Come, my prince. Let's get you to your sister and uncle." But on the way, Naruto felt the seal activate. In a quick blur and much to Rose's fears, Naruto disappeared, leaving behind only a quick flash of yellow for Rose's peripheral vision to see. Naruto had arrived in the battlefield. He grabbed the very kunai he gave his father and which his father obviously threw, and found that it had been aimed at Robert Baratheon. Pulling out another kunai hidden in his personal, Naruto made short and quick work out of Robert. Over a dozen strikes from his kunai, cutting through his armor like a hot knife through butter. It was a bit excessive, Naruto had to admit, but he was pressed for time and was concerned for the well-being of his father. All around him men fought, but he managed to quickly assess who was loyalist and who was rebel. It was time to get to work. Naruto threw the three-pronged kunai up in the sky and he quickly followed after it. In midair, Naruto had a good vantage point of the battlefield. He pulled out several more three-pronged kunai from his person and threw them all over the battlefield. And from there, it was like shooting fish in a barrel. Wherever the kunai went, he would travel there, and he used his small height to his advantage by severing the Achilles tendons of all those who fought for the rebels' side. From the recruited farmer to the trained knight to the highest lord, all fell to the superior speed and power of the five-named Orange Prince. Nobody saw it coming. Nobody. And Naruto quickly issued the order for the fallen soldiers to be disarmed. But to be otherwise left unharmed. With the rebels all disabled, the battle was won. Naruto didn't forget his father either. He got back to him just as he was about to lose consciousness or even die, but luckily, Naruto healed him for the more fatal injuries, leaving behind the broken bones deliberately to be some form of punishment for his father for partly causing all this mess. Once all the rebels had been bandaged up, because Naruto did not want to permanently cripple them, he had gathered the rebel leaders who were on their beds. A bandaged-up Esser Baristan was with him plus 3 additional guards. The lords were all disabled, but they weren't about to let the prince get about unguarded. To them, there was still a chance Rhaegar could die, and they weren't about to risk losing 2 princes. Lord Stark, Lord Aaron, Lord Tully. "Have you been treated well?" The major lords of the rebel kingdoms were there as well, but Naruto had no time to greet them all. Ned looked plainly at the boy who ushered their thorough defeat, as well as a prisoner of war can hope. Lord Aaron, the grandfatherly man that he was born no ill will towards Naruto despite the defeat he just handed to them. "I had heard you were gifted by the gods. But I never thought they would gift you that much." A lot of lords then grumbled at that. Everyone in the room knew he wasn't like most children and shouldn't be treated as such. "Did you come here to gloat, boy?" demanded Lord Tully. Naruto smiled at him gently. "I don't kick a man when he is already down, Lord Tully." He shook his head. "I came here to negotiate." "Negotiate, ha. Lord Umber would have none of it. It was one thing for you to have beaten us thanks to the massive amount of favor the gods have given you, but what makes you qualified to negotiate?" Lord Umber challenged. "Lord Umber, be quiet." Lord Blackwood ordered. "Do not forget whose mercy we are at right now." "I do not take orders from you, Blackwood. But you do take orders from me." Ned pointed out sternly. "Still your tongue, Lord Umber. Let the Orange Prince speak." Lord Umber frowned but did as commanded. "My lords, it goes without saying that you have lost. I have already dispatched our quickest messenger to Storm's End, inform the garrison there of your defeat. The matter to settle now is what to do with you. For what you have done, I should strip you all of your lands and titles, have you shipped to the wall and your daughters married to those loyal to the crown." Lord Karstark cut him off. "Your father abducted and raped our liege lord's daughter, and your grandfather murdered our liege lord and his son. We were fighting for a just cause." Lord Manderley cried out, and the northern lords present all agreed. "I'll be clear with you, my lords. I have no idea what went on, but I assure you my father is no kidnapper and rapist." "And how could you be so sure?" Lord Royce demanded an answer. I am my father's son and I know him far better than any of you ever will. Worry not, I will get to the bottom of this. And if my father is as you accuse him to be, I shall deal with him personally. But that aside, I also can't deny that the North did fight for a just reason. Lord Aaron, you started this war to protect your wards, your foster sons, did you not? That is true, Prince Aegon. Well, I fought to protect my family. We all fought to protect the ones we love. So I offer you all this. Swear your oaths of fealty again and bend the knee once more, well after you've healed. I'll have your severed Achilles tendons stitched up and allow you to walk again once it has fully healed. I shall have your men safely escorted home. I shall let you retain your lands and titles. No hostages will be taken. But I will increase your taxes about 10% for the next decade. The Lord grumbled at the last of Naruto's terms. The Riverlands and the Stormlands will have a 15% increase for the next 15 years. Don't forget, you had no one to protect in this war and you, Lord Tully, used this war to sell your daughters to the highest lord available. You disgust me. The matter of how women were treated here would have to change when he would become king. And if we refuse? Lord Estermont asked out curiosity, not defiance. What do you think happens to rebellious lords? Naruto made the most sinister smile he could to intimidate them. And it worked. And my sister, Lyanna? Ned inquired. I shall have her returned to you. Oh, how can we refuse when you've rendered Alvis and our men unable to walk? Lord Tully angrily moaned. It was war, Lord Tully. Don't forget, I could have slit all your throats instead of your ankles. The very thought of that put them all on edge. They had not considered that, but you didn't. Lord Bolton pointed out. Enough lives have been lost, my lords. I had the power to stop this war without further loss of life and I did just that. With the exception of Robert Baratheon, of course. So what will it be, my lords? Hold on a minute here. Lord Corbray interrupted. What of your grandfather? What of the Mad King? Several nods and murmurs of agreements echoed in the tent. What of it? Let the madman rave. I will make sure every order he gives is undermined. Let him rule in name only. I will not let his madness bring any more chaos to Westeros. You would defy your own grandfather? Jon Arryn questioned. No, I would defy a madman and a tyrant. Naruto answered coldly. You've seen what I can do. And that's barely scratching the surface of what I am truly capable of. Disposing of one old man who is clearly not capable of ruling a kingdom competently should not be difficult at all. A cell somewhere in the Red Keep's dungeons should suffice. What, did you think I would commit the crime of kinslaying? Lord Jon Arryn chuckled contentedly. Very well. The Vale accepts these terms. As does the North, said Ned. The major riverlords all looked to their liege lord and all took a silent sigh of relief when he said, the Riverlands accepts your terms, Prince Aegon. Then Naruto turned to the Stormlords who all looked to each other. Silently and with only eye contact as communication, Lord Estermont said, it is not in our place to surrender. It is with our liege lord, Stannis Baratheon. It was the true of the matter. If you are worried about some kind of repercussion in the future from Stannis Baratheon, don't worry. I will make sure nothing of the sort happens to you. Then we, the lords of the Stormlands, accept these terms. Well, good. Naruto then ordered one of the guards, inform the cooks they can bring in their meals now. At once, my prince. The guard bowed and left the tent. After a while, some servant entered with a cart that carried the lords' meals. Warm bowls containing an unfamiliar dish to the lords was set on the small tables next to their beds. It came with only a pair of chopsticks and a wooden spoon. What in seven hells is this? Lord Bracken asked as he inspected their food. I call it ramen. I invented it. Well, Naruto had them made with the limited supplies available and with haste. You didn't poison this, did you? Lord Waynwood accused. We already agreed on the terms. I have no reason to poison you now. Enjoy, and with that he left the tent with Esser Barristan and the other guards following suit. The lords all picked up the chopsticks and examined them. They stayed quiet for some time until Lord Umber broke it. Okay, I'll ask. How do we use these? Silence was the only answer he received. It had taken them 10 minutes to figure out what the chopsticks were for, but none of them could get the hang of it. But the dish tasted good and they ultimately decided to eat the noodles using their fingers. There was no shame in eating that way. That little shit, the lords all muttered as they chewed on the delicious noodles. Afterwards, Naruto met a camp follower named Qyburn. The man was an expelled maester, a man from the citadel who was stripped of his chains. Yet Naruto found the man more capable and more willing to learn than other maesters in the camp. In the end, Qyburn learned how to reattach the severed Achilles tendons faster than the other maesters. If worse comes to worst, Naruto would just have to heal them personally. End flashback. This is so degrading, Lord John Umber hollered as a servant pushed his wooden wheelchair. I am a lord from the north, for God's sakes. I should not be placed on a chair with wheels and pushed around like I am a cripple. We apologize for the inconvenience, my lord. Apologize for the inconvenience. Apologize for the inconvenience. That's what you keep spouting about ever since we lost. You could serve to be more grateful, Lord Umber. They could have thrown us all into a cell and left us there to rot. Lord Roose Bolton whispered as he always did. Can it, Leech Lord? I am an Umber. Jam. Naruto had jumped up from the side unexpectedly and pushed a piece of bread into the big lord's equal big mouth. We'll sit down and like it. Little Naruto said. Good morrow to you, my lords of the north. He cheerfully called out. All the lords snapped their heads at him. Some looked mad, some looked impassive. Lord Bolton just gave him an examining stare. This was after all the boy who single-handedly defeated them all. The boy who came from nowhere and, in a flash of yellow, severed the tendon that apparently enabled them to stand and walk. In all his years as a man who secretly flayed his enemies, he has never realized that there existed such a part of the body. The Achilles tendon, the little prince called it. Lord Bolton would have to take note of that for future endeavors. Then Naruto hopped on Lord Umber's lap like the child that he was. Seriously, I treat you as you are due of being lords. I don't have you locked up or wrapped in chains. I have my people serve you 3 square meals a day. I don't see why you keep complaining. I even had craftsmen hastily build these wheelchairs for your use. Then he jumped off. Naruto had also confiscated all their weapons, horses and armor in case anyone got to thinking of doing some funny business. Though he did guarantee the return of all Valyrian steel weapons. Naruto was a sorcerer in their eyes and saw him with suspicion. Yet they could not deny that Naruto had spared them all when he could have just killed them without a second thought. It was war after all. That together with the fact that no hostages would be taken had at least made them less upset about losing. Their men were all left to either sit or lie down inside tents of their own and were being seen to. No one was killed after the negotiations and neither side seemed interested in provoking the other. Though Lord Bolton was sure Prince Aegon had made sure no one on the side of the loyalist would go and rub salt on the proverbial and literal wounds of the rebels. Naruto wanted peace after all. I swear to you, boy, that had you been a grown man I would have wringed your neck for jumping on me. Just go eat your lunch along with your fellow lords from the north, Lord Umber. Naruto instructed neutrally. It was about time to check on the lords of the Vale when Esir Barristan arrived. My prince, he said out of breath. He clearly was in a hurry to get to Aegon. What's wrong, Esir Barristan? Urgent news, he whispered to the boy as he got down to his level. Not here. Esir Barristan led him far out into the woods where no one would hear what he had to tell the young prince. You brought me all the way out here, Esir Barristan, what is it? Naruto asked curiously. The king is dead. Your father is now king of the 7 kingdoms. My grandfather has kicked the bucket? How? As mad and as filthy as he was far from death's door. Barristan knew what kick the bucket meant after spending so much time with Naruto. This part is why I brought you out here. The king was killed by Esir Jaime Lannister. Naruto was openly surprised by that. I knew his grandfather was an unlikable man, but he never thought one of his own Kingsguard would dislike him so much that he'd kill him. No, a simple manner of disliking someone was enough reason to kill anyone. Did Esir Jaime perhaps turn traitor and decided to aid the rebels? Naruto inquired, not accused. No, nothing like that. Barristan produced the scroll given to him earlier and handed it to the boy. He killed him for his maltreatment of my grandmother. Naruto said after reading the message. Naruto had been aware of how cruelly his grandfather treated his grandmother. How he would rape her after being aroused from burning someone to death for even the lowest and pettiest of crimes. Esir Gerald would do nothing, saying that it was not the Kingsguard's duty from stopping the king from taking his rights with the queen. Hearing him say that despite hearing the sounds his grandmother made beyond the doors he was standing guard, gave Naruto a low opinion on Esir Gerald. Naruto would have kicked the door down and put a stop to it if his mother had not intervened. Oh, there's so many times Naruto was tempted to plunge a kunai into his grandfather's forehead. He could have done it and gotten away with it too. But a part of him just couldn't bear the thought of killing a member of his own family. Was it right to kill a member of family to protect the rest? That had always conflicted him. It said that in a fit of madness and paranoia, the king had ordered for the queen to be burned alive, completely disregarding the fact she is with child. Sir Jaime would have none of it and plunged his sword into the back of the very man who he had sworn to protect and threatened the king's pyromancers with a sword to their throats. Said Barristan. And now, Sir Jaime is in a cell. I do not blame Sir Jaime for doing what he did. I wanted to do it myself for some time now. No. Do not say such things, Your Highness. He was still your grandfather. I know, Sir Barristan. Which is why he had lived to the point where Sir Jaime had to kill him. Naruto sighed. Send a raven back to the Red Keep in Castle Rock. Inform the guards that Sir Jaime is to be treated well but his hands bound and keep him away from all blades. Until I or my father hear the truth for ourselves, I can't risk that this was all some ploy from Tywin Lannister. Give Jaime Lannister a room suitable for the son of a Lord Paramount. Bar his windows and I want 3 well-armed guards standing outside his door at all times. Naruto took a breath. Inform Lord Tywin what his son has done and to come to King's Landing for his son's trial. When Naruto said nothing else, Barristan took it as his sign to go and obey. At once, Your Highness. The knight took off, leaving Naruto alone. Naruto pressed a finger to his chin. Now where was I? Then he brightened up. Oh yes. Time check out the Lords of the Vale. King's Landing. The armies of the rebels, with their Achilles tendons still not fully healed, were escorted back to their homes to be taken care of their families. The lords, still in their wheelchairs, were safely led to the Red Keep. Naruto had ordered the city watch to disperse the small folk and had them return to their homes or their duties. This was none of their business and the lords were not being paraded as losers. This is still so degrading. Lord Umber grumbled as his wheelchair was pushed all the way to the Red Keep. Tywin Lannister had arrived in the city with no more than 50 men at arms as his guards and his dwarf of a second son. Lord Tywin had been very skeptical when he heard all the lords involved in the rebellion were rendered disabled. He was soon more willing to give it more credence upon seeing the wheelchair-bound lords of the North, Vale, Stormlands and Riverlands. Jaime, are you all right? Tywin asked his eldest son when he visited him. His tone did not show any evidence of actually concern. Jaime raised his bound wrists. Aside from this, I'm peachy. I haven't been beaten or tortured and I'm fed regularly. Prince Rhaegar is still indisposed. I heard Prince Aegon will serve as your judge for your trial. Jaime smiled. Then it shall be a fair one. You sound confident. If it is indeed Prince Aegon presiding over my trial, it shall be a fair one. Besides, like you, Prince Aegon held little love for his mad grandfather. HMPH. How is Prince Aegon? Jaime answered him with only one word. Young. Then he added after some thought, he may request you return to your position of Hand of the King. Oh, we'll see about that. And indeed, Sir Jaime's trial was a fair one. In the witness of all the Lord gathered both loyalists and rebels, Jaime Lannister was trial of the crime of kingslaying. With Aegon, Elia and Rhaella presiding as his judges and with witnesses to the crime validating Sir Jaime's testimony, it was time for the verdict to be reached. It was such a sight for all those present. A 5-named-old boy being a judge in a trial. But that boy was responsible for restoring peace to the realm. Jaime Lannister, for the crimes of kingslaying, thus breaking your oath to protect the king, we find you guilty. And with that the throne room erupted in chaos. The attending lords were quiet. It was the small folk who made all the noise. Silence. Sir Gerald roared, which effectively made the small folk still their tongues. Aegon continued, however, this court acknowledges that even though what you did was dishonorable, you did it for an honorable reason, to protect Queen Rhaella and the child she carries. An act I'm sure the Queen Mother is very grateful for. Jaime saw Rhaella nod and rub her growing belly. Queen Elia continued after her grandson. Sir Jaime, for what you did and why you did it, we hereby offer you an official pardon from the crown. And with that, Jaime let out a sigh. He had never been more relieved. Tywin Lannister kept his satisfaction hidden. However, you can no longer be a part of the Kingsguard. For the first time in history, a member of the Kingsguard will be dismissed of his duties. Jaime Lannister, you are stripped of your white cloak and your position as heir to Castle Rock is reinstated," announced Queen Rhaella. "Jaime Lannister, you are free to go. The royal family has spoken," Naruto said as loud as he could, ending any matter of debate from all those in attendance. "This court is adjourned." Jaime turned to his father, looking mentally exhausted. "Well, you got what you wanted. I told you it would be a fair trial. All that matters is you are no longer a glorified bodyguard." Typical Tywin. Tywin was approached later on by Aegon to be Hand of the King again, while offering the position of Master of Laws to Lord Jon Arryn. The old lord accepted, but only after his feet recovered. For Lord Tywin, it seemed he had gotten back everything that was his. It was all going great for him until I stole the girl's clothes and she had to walk home naked and in tears. Tywin saw his 10-year-old dwarf of a son talking to Prince Aegon. They both laughed so hard until it brought them to tears. When the laughter died down, Aegon told Tyrion, "I like you, Tyrion. You should stay here. Let's be friends." The last 3 words Tywin heard echoed in his mind several times. "Oh, I'm not so sure about that. My father might not allow it. While I am a prince, I'm sure I can sway him my way," Aegon said, nudging his elbow light at Tyrion's side. The 2 newly formed friends walked off. Tywin then got over his shock but truly had no idea what to do with the situation. It had so many pros and cons to it. Lords of the rebelled kingdoms swore their oaths of fealty again, but to Rhaegar this time. After that, the lords were all escorted home with the exception of Lord Arryn and Eddard Stark. Lyanna Stark had been arranged to come to the Red Keep, her belly round with child. She had at first wanted to see Rhaegar first, but Sir Arthur had orders to take her to her brother first. Whatever they spoke about, Aegon didn't know and Aegon didn't care. But apparently, Lord Stark had forgiven her sister but had banished her from ever entering the North. Now that he and Lords of the North were all informed that she had left willingly and not kidnapped as first thought, the Northern Lords had held her partially responsible for the war. Aegon had already done what he could to appease them by letting off easy with just raised taxes for a finite amount of time and by not mistreating them. If Lord Stark was going to keep his bannermen calm and from demanding Lyanna's head, he had to banish her from the North. Lyanna had surprised Ned when she said she would accept responsibility for what she did and remain in the South. The 2 siblings embraced and said their final farewells as Ned had to return north the earnest. And sooner he got out of the viper pit of a city the better. When Lyanna was left alone, it was then Aegon made his presence known. "Hello, Lady Lyanna." The 5-name-day-old entered her room. Lyanna had been smoothly running her hand around her large belly as she sat on the edge of her bed. "Prince Aegon, please, I am no lady. You are the daughter of a lord and you are the sister of a lord. Thus you are a lady. I had heard that Lord Stark has forbidden you from ever stepping a foot in your family's lands again," Naruto said, approaching her. "You heard correctly," Lyanna said somberly. "I'm sorry to hear that, Lady Lyanna. I'm sure that wasn't an easy decision for your brother to make." His sympathy caught Lyanna off guard. "I'm curious, what exactly was going through yours and my father's minds when you 2 decided to elope without notice?" It was like she wasn't talking to a 5-year-old nearing 6. "I don't know what was going through our minds. I just wanted to escape from situation my life was in at the time. I never intended for my brother or my father to get killed or for war to happen. So you used my father as a means to escape the life you had, to escape your marriage to Robert Baratheon?" he asked non-accusatory. "I love your father. And I know now it is an insult to your mother's honor, but your father loves me." She rubbed her belly as if showing in the fruits of their love. Aegon mentally scoffed. Children were not always the proof of love between their parents. It was a harsh truth, but a truth Naruto did not shy away from. "I'm sure he does," he said kindly. "What is wrong with you?" Lyanna snapped. "Aren't you mad at me or at your father?" Naruto blinked and looked at her blankly. "Make no mistake, I am not pleased about everything that has happened. You 2 acted very irresponsibly. My father humiliated my mother. I may be young, but I am not naive nor am I stupid. I know that kings and lords have mistresses on the side and bastards too. I know my mother and father do not love each other as a husband and wife should. My mother is also Dornish. Now I do not wish to speak ill of any kind in regard to my own mother, but if my father can find a mistress, I'm sure my mother will put this behind her and find a paramour of her own. Though I reckon she'll be more discreet about it. My mother is a strong woman despite her frail health. I don't believe in keeping a grudge or in petty things like revenge. We need not be at odds, Lady Lyanna. We can coexist civilly and peacefully in this castle. The way I see it, you've been punished enough. Your actions led to the deaths of your father, brother and thousands more innocents who had nothing to do with what you and my father did or the whims of their lords. There are people out there who will call you, the whore who started a war. You will forever have to live with all of that. I just wanted to be me. I only wanted to be able to make my own choices, to be free. I'd like to believe that. I want to believe that. I have always believed that everyone should be able to choose how they should live their life. Within the confines of the law, of course. I would never stop anyone from reaching their goals. These are just some of the things that I will have to change once I am king. But if you truly wanted to be free and to live a life where no one chooses for you, then you would have run away the moment you were told to marry that stag with no choice in the matter. Lyanna said nothing. The thought of running away had often crossed her mind, but she never had the courage to actually go through with it. And for all her talk of being strong and being capable of fighting, it had taken Rhaegar to convince her to leave. What you did was selfish and could have been handled so much better. But what's done is done. No point in beating a dead horse. Then Naruto stood beside Lyanna on her bed and placed his small hands on her big belly. Besides, my little sibling is in here. I wish to get along with my little siblings. Or are you opposed to it? He said after drawing his hand back. No. She snapped again. Then she immediately calmed down. No, I would prefer my child gets along with its older brother and sister. Naruto smiled at her. Then we have an accord. Naruto noticed Lyanna's dress had shown off the top side of her breasts. Lyanna did not feel the need to hide them from a five-named child. Naruto smiled deviously at Lyanna just before, double slap. Naruto's little hands slapped the front of Lyanna's engorged bosoms. Lyanna yelped in pain and crossed her arms protectively over her breasts. It was two playful slaps but was still intended to cause some level of pain. Naruto knew that women would have tender breasts during pregnancy, and seeing as how Lyanna was clearly in pain proved his guess correct. Naruto laughed and jumped away. Why in the southern seven hells did you do that for? Lyanna demanded, tending to her aching breasts. Just a little bit of punishment from me. Naruto continued laughing. Don't feel too bad. I did it to Dad as well. Remember him poking Rhaegar's wounded chest? Well, he did some more of that when no one was looking. Lyanna stared at the boy annoyed. She then sighed after concluding he could do much worse than aggravating her tender bosoms. After a while, Naruto's laughter died down. Are you done? Yes, I am. With that he turned around for the door. It was only now that the conversation fully sunk into Lyanna. Wait, Prince Aegon. Yes? Are you really 5 name days? Do I look like an old man to you? Ned told me it was you who killed Robert Baratheon, that it was you who put a stop to the rebellion, that are you some sorcerer? Is that all true? Did you really do all that? Naruto sent her a kind of smile that seemed to chill her spine despite being of the north. Oh my lady Lyanna, if I wanted to, the Battle of the Trident would have been called the Massacre at the Trident and you would have lost all but one brother, I believe. She gulped silently as she believed his every word. Then he beckoned her with his little arm. Come on, let's go. She stood up. Wait, where are we going? I'm taking you to my dad. He's still reeling from Robert's warhammer. His coronation was actually postponed until he has fully recovered. It would not do for a king to be coronated while in bed. My father has made his peace with me and my mother and explained to us why he did what he did. Honestly, to risk it all partly for some prophecy is just plain stupid. Just try not to rub it in my mother's face now, all right? Lyanna just nodded. The two went out and Aegon led his father's mistress to his room where he was still recovering. Is your mother truly all right with all this? I told you they've made their peace. Just be discreet and don't rub it in. I should expect my mother to take on a paramour soon. Who knows, I might get a half-sibling from my mother next year. The last part was a joke. Naruto knew giving birth to another child could quite possibly kill his mother. You're very different from how I expected a 5 name day boy would react to all this. I'm not most 5 name day boys. He told her. I'm sure my dad has brought up the subject of the prince that was promised. He has mentioned it. Oh, and before I forget, my uncle Oberyn is here. He's still pretty upset about what you and Dad did, so you may want to avoid him. What does he look like?" Lyanna inwardly scolded herself for not paying attention to the nobles during the tourney at Harrenhal. "You'll know him when you see him. He'll probably be the guy who'll run angrily at you with a poison-coated spear." Naruto joked, partly, he hoped. King's Landing, 8 years later, and so life in the royal court went on and for the people of Westeros. Lyanna gave birth to a baby girl, the child Rhaegar was hoping for, and was named Visenya accordingly. Rhaegar was officially crowned king when he was strong enough to stand without flinching. Queen Rhaella gave birth to her third and final child, Daenerys Targaryen. Elia never did took a paramour. Oberyn eventually got over it. Stannis married Cersei Lannister. Ned brought Jon Snow to live with him in Winterfell, much to the dismay of Catelyn and all the rebel lords and men whose Achilles tendon Aegon had severed all healed. 8 years passed and the crown prince had just celebrated his 13th nameday. Naruto was opposed to having such an extravagant birthday, but his parents were insistent. He and Rhaenys were officially a grown man and a grown woman. They were officially of the age for marrying in Westerosi society. Much to Naruto's relief, Rhaegar had discarded the plan to wed brother to sister, having seen firsthand the result of several generations of incest. Lucky for them all, for Aegon would have thrown a tantrum like no other if he was made to marry Rhaenys or Visenya or Daenerys or even Arianne Martell. To him, an aunt was still an aunt and a cousin was still a cousin. His siblings, aunt and cousin, were all beautiful young women, but he shivered at the thought of marrying them. And heavens forbid, Visenya was only 8 namedays old. Within that 8 years, Naruto had succeeded in introducing ramen to all of Westeros. He had gotten his siblings and his uncle and aunt and his cousins, Arianne and the Sand Snakes, to love the dish. That was once goal down. Another goal was fixing the stink of King's Landing with a better sewage system. It had taken some time to get Rhaegar to agree to it, but it was mostly due to priority concerns. There were other concerns that needed dealt with first. Like those Ironborn that launched their own rebellion a few years back, thinking Westeros had not fully recovered from the previous war. There was still so much to do. Aegon thought as he headed back to his room. "Ah, nephew," Oberyn drew his attention. "I'm glad I caught up with you." His uncle said in the usual cheery way that he reserved for family and loved ones. Naruto had been at the door of his room when he heard his uncle speak. Together with his uncle was the woman he had brought with him to the capital. He clearly remembers his uncle reaffirming that she wasn't his wife but only his paramour. Typical Dornish. Naruto had secretly amused at the time. But yes, the woman was his uncle's main lover. The two engaged in voyeurism and had high libidos. Naruto was never held all that against them since they had come to that understanding of their relationship from the very get-go. They also have about 2 daughters. "I'm sure you remember my paramour, Ellaria Sand." Oberyn gestured to the lovely woman beside him. Naruto hadn't paid much attention to Ellaria since she arrived, not because he didn't like her but because he never felt the need to. She was a nice enough woman and his uncle loved her very much. Now however, Ellaria, as Naruto had just noticed, was dressed rather scantily and provocatively. Translucent Myrish silk that barely concealed her enticing form. Her dark nipples on her breasts and her triangular patch of hair between her thighs. His manhood twitched inside his orange-colored trousers. Despite having the mind of an adult as a baby and despite Tyrion showing off the whores he has bedded, Naruto never felt the urge to have sex with a woman. Must be a hormonal thing playing on his urges, yes. Naruto trailed off. "Nephew, you are 13 now. A man in the eyes of the world. I was thinking of the perfect nameday gift to you when I realize a boy is never truly a man until he has experienced the sensual touch of a woman." So Ellaria and I spoke in length, huh? This only served to amuse Oberyn. "Ellaria, please show my nephew the pleasures of being with a woman." Oberyn opened the door to Naruto's room. "You're going to love it. Come on, my prince." Ellaria took his hand in hers and led him in his room. Naruto, in a combination of excitement and nervousness, couldn't refuse. "I'll make your first time unforgettable. I'm going to fuck your brains out," she said with an alluring smile. "Now I better see my paramour's experienced flower thoroughly seated by the time you are done." Oberyn instructed before closing the door. "Happy nameday, nephew," Oberyn said ever so cunningly, and there you have it. Rinnegan Rhaegar's purple eyes were met with lavender with ripple pattern rings. This eye color, no, these eyes as a whole came as a full surprise, even as a cause for alarm, to Rhaegar. The Kingsguard senses his distress. They saw it too. The babe prince's unusual eyes. But they said and did nothing. What did the Grandmaster say about his sight? Gerald inquired. None. The boy was asleep when he entered the world. Rhaegar was new to parenting, but the way his son looked at him did not seem normal. He entertained the possibility his son could be blind. But he had heard newborns couldn't focus their sight. But his son's multi-ringed eyes were set on him, not unlike how a hunter set his aim at his game. It even seemed as though he was trying to memorize his face. But then the rings faded and gave way to a normal bright blue of color. Did you see that, Sir Gerald? Rhaegar gasped, which was somewhat unbecoming of a prince. I saw it, Your Highness. There is something not normal about this child. Gerald stated it was simple stated fact on Gerald's part, but Rhaegar did not perceive it that way. Your meaning, Sir Gerald? Rhaegar narrowed his eyes at the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard. I meant no disrespect or insult, my prince. But you and I did just see his eyes change. Rhaegar hummed and decided to drop the matter of his son's eye color. The Red Keep was no longer the Red Keep. One day everyone woke up to find the Red Keep painted bright orange. A part was left unpainted which peculiarly spelled out, Aegon Targaryen was here and did this. He and Elia looked to their son, who smiled innocently and shifted his eyes away from them. But no one could prove anything, so nothing could be done. Who in Planetos was going to believe that a toddler, a small 2-year-old at the time, was capable of scaling the entirety of the Red Keep in painted orange? Spin the insult. Eddard Stark was being pushed along by loyalist soldier who under orders to lead Eddard where he wants to go within the camp. The Orange Prince has severed the tendons responsible for standing and walking, and thus he had to sit on a wheelchair provided by the same prince. He then spotted his lords gathered around in a circle, their backs to him, and he could hear them yelling out, "Oh, h. Just what are they doing over there?" Ned asked his watcher. "They're just playing spin the insult, my lord." His watcher replied, "Spin the what? It is as I said it, my lord." Your bannermen are gathered around in a circle on their wheelchairs with a small table placed in the center. On that table is sheathed sword. One of the lords will state a slight or an insult, and then they have someone spin the sword on the table, and whomever the sword points to is the receiver of the insult. It appears Prince Aegon is facilitating the game. Well, he was the one who introduced it. You're a filthy pile of shit, and your mother was an even filthier whore, bellowed Great John Umber. Orange Prince, spin that damn sword. Naruto did just that and sat on the ground with a happy smile on his lips. Naruto didn't bother trying to see who the sword would point once it stopped, but went the Northern Lords, followed by loud laughter. Seeing as how Lord Rickard Stark and Lord Mormont were nudging Lord Wyman Manderley, who was sitting between them, told Naruto that the sword pointed at Lord Manderley. Lord Wyman took its stride. "Whose turn is it?" asked Lord George Mormont. "Mine," said Roose Bolton. "Okay, here's my slight. Your house is a disgrace and doesn't deserve to exist. My prince, if you would be so kind." Ned gasped from his spot. "By the gods, even Roose Bolton is in on it. Dealing with the Ironborn, excellent news, your grace, my lords." Pycelle brought forth a scroll with his shaking hands and opened it. "A raven from Pike arrived this morning." Pycelle handed it to Rhaegar. "It is terms of surrender from Lady Greyjoy herself." The king stated, "Terms of surrender?" Tywin raised a half-angry eyebrow. Tywin kept it well hidden, but he was furious when he had heard the Ironborn had burned down the Lannister fleet and attacked Lannisport. He had sworn to himself he would make those glorified pirates pay for what they did. "Yes, my lord Tywin." She writes that her husband is dead, her 2 older sons are dead, her good brothers are also dead, as well as most of the lords of the Iron Isles. All of them found with a dagger sticking out of their heads. Furthermore, they lost all their ships. Impossible. Barristan quipped, "How could they have lost all their men?" "Not their men, Sir Barristan. Only their ships. They still have most of their able-bodied men, but all their ships have sunken, their commanders and leaders are gone, and they haven't heard anything from the forces they already sent out. She presumes they are stranded in whatever land they set out to plunder." "We must act quickly then." Jon Arryn proposed. This is the perfect opportunity to strike back. We will, Lord Arryn. Lord Varys, can you verify that this isn't some sort of trap? A few little birds flew my way earlier today and sang a similar song. Squids that have wandered onto land not their own have found themselves stranded and unable to return home. That's very reassuring. Now we must order the lords of the western coasts of the Reach and Westerlands to move against those Ironborn. Rhaegar nodded. We will, Lord Tywin, but first we must. He trailed off. Your Grace? There's still more to the letter. Rhaegar's small council looked at him curiously. Even Pyso. Seems like he didn't read all of the message. She further says that some of the men claim to have seen a young boy in orange running across the water no differently than how one walks across land. They then heard whistling. Coming from Prince Aegon, who had remained silent all that time. What? He asked as he sat up straight. I'm just whistling. His father and all the lords gave him a deadpan look while the Orange Prince kept up his grin. First time with Rose, Naruto entered his quarters. It was a long, fun day. There he found on his bed was Rose, his wet nurse turned ordinary maidservant for the royal family. Rose's eyes brightened upon seeing him. Naruto closed the door behind him. He didn't know why, but his hand had locked the door. My prince, I had been waiting for you. How long were you in here? Sometime after midday meal. Well, that certainly explains where she had gone to. Rose stood and pulled her loose gown off her shoulders, exposing her shapely body and her ever-bountiful breasts. Her pink nipples were cute and stood erect. Come here, my orange prince. She beckoned at him with her fingers seductively. Naruto gulped as he slowly made his way to her. He felt his trousers tighten. When he got close, she leaned in for a kiss. She was still taller than him, so she had to adjust to his level a bit. Rose inserted her tongue in his mouth. At first, she dominated his mouth, subjugating his tongue before bringing over to her mouth. But Naruto seemed to have different plans. His tongue fought back before bringing her tongue back into his mouth. They broke the kiss, a long string of saliva connecting their lips. Rose, we can't do this. You're married. The older woman cupped her young prince's cheeks. No need to feel guilt, my prince. You wouldn't be the first royal to have lain with another man's wife. She giggled, and besides, my husband cheated on me and has bastards. She kissed him again. Now let's get you out of these clothes. And on that night, Naruto lost his virginity. A second time, he thinks. Thanks for watching, guys.